Welcome to today's lesson. For today we're going to go ahead and cover how to import reference images, create reference layers, and initiate the scene within Maya to start modeling. For today's model, we'll go ahead and use a metal drum. I have included all the images, so if you can, just download the images, and you'll use those to work with within Maya. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and work within Photoshop. I want to create the images, or as far as I need the reference images for a model. I have downloaded the images. We're going to start with the drum, and if you notice, we have a drum front. I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to use this one to model with, and also we have a drum top, and this image I end up getting so that we can work with the detail for the top portion of the drum. Alright, so within Photoshop, I'm just going to go ahead and open up that image of the drum. Okay, and here what I want to do is I want to go ahead and crop this image. So I'll unlock it. There we go. So I'm going to try to get all the image within my bounding box. I'll hit done. And then lastly, what I want to do is clean up the outside. That way I can just have the reference to this object itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do my selection. So once I have this cropped, I'm going to go ahead and select the area in the back. That way I can delete what I don't need. Alright, so you could go ahead and go around here, select the areas, make sure that I stay within the drum itself. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but we want to at least get majority of this out of the way. Alright, that's about what we need. We'll go ahead, Control Z. I want to invert my selection. Select, invert, and then I'll mask. So I've masked the drum. We'll be able to use this as my layer. So I'll export this as a quick PNG, and I'll put here drum underscore front underscore 1. Save that. Now the top, I don't really have to do that, because the top we're going to model that separately, and then we'll import it into the scene. and place it where we need. And you notice that the top portion is going to be broken down to two separate sections. I'm going to have the top, the drum, and then I'm going to create the additional details separately. And later on, when we model, I'll explain why. And you'll start noticing when we start working with a lot of mesh and a lot of density that sometimes working in different models and then applying them and putting them together works a lot better than just trying to work on just one mesh. Alright, so now that I have that saved, I'll go ahead I'll get these two and I'll copy these and I'll place them inside our project folder. And remember, what did I mention? I mentioned that source images is anything that's being imported into Maya. So I'll place them here. And that should be it for setting up our images. I'll go ahead and go to new. And again, I'm going to set my project. I usually do this every single time that I open Maya, and I do that because I want to make sure I'm in that project. Sometimes you'll forget that you were doing something previously, and your images and stuff won't come out. Alright, so for reference images, we need to create a reference plane or an image plane. Alright, we will be modeling in the front and side view all at the same time. And I'll cover how to maneuver within the different perspectives and how to create these planes. Alright, so if we look at our scene here, we have the reference box for which view we're looking at. So if we want to look at the front, we're going to put an image plane here, and we'll also put one on the right side, and then we'll space those out so we can work in an enclosed area. And the process is called box modeling, and you'll see why. We're going to kind of create a model within a box. So I'll go ahead and go to my front view, and to place a reference image, I'm going to go to view, and you'll see here image plane, and I'll go ahead and import image, and you'll notice we have our drum front. Again, source images, anything imported into Maya goes into source images. I'll click open. So now we have our drum image and our reference per se to how we're going to construct. And the way to do that is unselect and then select the reference image again. And you'll notice now I have the channel box layer editor has the scale options. So within X and Y, I'll choose 2 and 2. This increases the size of the image. I usually do this. I like to work with larger images and larger models. Then I'll scale down once I've completed the modeling process. The next portion is to move this center gizmo down to the bottom here. And the way to do that is hold down D. You'll notice that when you press D, the gizmo changes, and when we let go, it goes back to normal. When it changes, this gizmo allows you to maneuver it down to where you need. What I'm going to do is align the edges so they're together. You'll notice now that I can move my model up to the top portion of the plane or the 0 position. And if I look at perspective, I notice that I'm on top. Now, if you notice, I'm moving between screens. And the way it's done is with the space bar. You move your mouse over to a window, you hit space, and it'll jump into that perspective. If I go to front, side, and top. So now that I have my model or my reference image on top of the plane, I'm going to go ahead and bring this back. And I'm going to create a layer. So I'm going to go down here to layers, and where it says create layer from selected, I'll click on that, and I'll name this one front underscore drum. And to create a reference so we don't accidentally click on the barrel, we have to change this blank option to R, reference. You'll notice now that it cannot be selected. Also gives me the ability to change the visibility. So if I need to hide references while I'm working, I can do that quickly without having to go into any options up here. So now that I have the front view complete, I'm going to do the same thing to the side view. I'm going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image. And again, I'm going to have to deselect, select it again, and go down to my scales, 2 and 2. Once that's done, I can hold down D, and I'll move this down to match the bottom edge. And lastly, I'll move it up to stay above the plane. And this one I'm going to push back to the edge of the grid. And I can actually add this reference image to this layer, so I can right click on the layer and add selected objects. And now you notice that I cannot select the images. And I can hide them when I need. So now that we have this set up, let's go ahead and start working with modeling. Alright. The first thing I want to do when it comes to modeling is I want to see what object does this represent the most, because it makes it easier for me to it makes it easier for a modeler to create the object based on its appearance. So the best option is a cylinder. So I'll go ahead and select polygon cylinder, and you'll notice it gets placed in the center of my scene. From here, you'll notice that the model blocks the reference image, and I'll kind of show you a little bit better how to what it does. So once I have the model in space, you'll notice that the center of my gizmo is at the bottom. It's at the center of the object. What I want to do is I want to change it to where it's at the bottom. Alright, so we're going to start using snap. Snapping basically allows you to snap to a specific option, which are noted up here at the top. You have a snap to grids, snap to curves, snap to points, and snap to projected center. We can snap to view planes, but we don't really use that. And make selected object live. Basically, when we start working with retopologizing, we'll be using that option, and I'll explain how that works later. So let's go ahead and switch or change our gizmo to bottom. Now, the way I do this is I hold down D, and I'll also hold down V for vertices. You notice that when I hold down V, it changes the center of the gizmo again. And if I just drag this down, I can snap straight to the bottom vertices of my object. Let go, and now I can move my object from the bottom. Great thing about this is, if I do a scale, I can scale from the bottom. So let's move our object or our cylinder up to the bottom edge of our image, and then I'll increase so we can match the width. Alright, so the major problem I'm running into now is that I can't really see what's the image is showing. And that's because our object has, it's showing its texture. So the way we change this is if we go to shading, we switch this to wireframe. And we'll do that as well to the side view. And now I'm able to see what the model is like on top of the surface of the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and remember I kind of mentioned that a object has various components. We have an object, which is the whole object itself. We have the faces, so we can select individual faces, or we can select a group of faces. If you notice, to select a group, I click outside the object and drag to the selection that I want. If I select individual faces, I just left click on the face. If I want to select multiple faces, within the surface, one at a time, I can select one, hold down shift, and you notice that I can select the next one by holding down shift. You notice if it's selected, it automatically goes to a minus. That means I can take it away as long as I hold down shift, or I can add it as long as I hold down shift. If you want to deselect faces, you can hold down Control and deselect the ones you don't need. You'll notice that you cannot reselect them as long as you hold down Control. It is only deselect. But holding down Shift, you can add to your selection or take away the selection you have. And the last component is vertices. We look at vertex. You'll notice that we have these little dots on our mesh, and that's basically the vertex that's in space. Remember that a quad is comprised of 4 vertices, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 face, and 4 edges. A tri only has 3. But tris are not good when modeling. Try to stay away from tris. I'll show you how we can do that with this type of model. Alright, so now that we've gone over components, what I want to do is I want to select vertex and select all the top vertices here and move these up. Once I have that done, I have the overall basic shape that I need for my drum. The next thing I gotta focus on is creating these portions that are coming out of the drum. And those are actually fairly easy to create. Now we're going to go start working into our modeling toolkit, because I'm going to have to start cutting the surface and manipulating the surface. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to modeling toolkit, and I'm going to use multi-cut. Now multi-cut allows you to cut slices on the surface of your model. There's various ways of cutting. You can cut across. You'll notice it places an edge. You can cut diagonal, and what it's doing is it's pinpointing all the intersections of the vertices, and it just places a cut right on top of it. If you hold down Control while you're on the model, you'll get a guideline showing you where you're cutting. If you hold down Control and Shift, then it does it in increments of 10. If you hold down Shift, you can actually cut on one vertice in the center. Or if you just cut on the surface of an edge, you can click and drag where you want your cut to be. Once you let go, it places a vertex there. What I want to use is Control. This allows me to cut this in various places. So I'm going to cut on the top and the bottom. And to cut the center between these two, I'm going to click the middle mouse button, and that places a center cut between two edges. And I'll do that to the bottom section here, above, below, and center, and at the bottom here, above, and center. Yeah, I forgot this one here up at the top, so I'll go ahead and do this one, bottom, center. And I'll hit Q. Remember, Q terminates the option that you have selected. So now our barrel is, it's starting to look somewhat. The next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and go to edges. Now, I'm going to scale this center edge. So for selecting edges, we can select one edge, hold down Shift, can select multiple edges. If you want to select the edges that are running around the barrel, you would do a section, or you would select your first edge. You hold down Shift and double click the edge next to it, and you notice all the edges around the barrel get selected just on this portion. Well, I can do that as well for edge loops. So if I want to select this whole edge loop around the center, just double click on that edge. You notice it selects all the edges around the barrel. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and increase the size. So I'm going to go to Scale, and I'm going to scale it evenly to push this out so it matches somewhat the reference. Alright, and I'll do that to this one as well. Alright, now you'll notice here that we have, it's not really curved, it's at angles of 45 degrees. To get that curvature, we're going to have to add a center cut here and a center cut here. And I'm going to select both these edge loops. Alright. And I'm going to scale these so we can round it off. There we go. I'll do the same thing down here. I'll go to multi-cut, center cut, hit Q, select my edge loops, and scale to round it off. The bottom and top portions are a little bit trickier. The way these are done is I like to first create quads on the top surface. So to select the top surface, I'll go to faces and I'll select all these faces here. You notice that it selects the side of the barrel plus it selects all the top. What I want to do is I want to hold down Control, and this time I'm going to drag and unselect the side faces. And you'll notice now that I only have the top selected. Now, an easier way would be to go from the top view and just select the top faces. And you notice if I do that, I can select the top and the bottom at the same time. And that's because Maya, when it's selecting, it calculates everything in its space of the marquee tool. So it'll go through the object and select what's underneath or behind it. So you also want to be careful when selecting. If we have the top and bottom selected, we can do the extrusion at the same time, but to simplify this for you, we're going to go ahead and just do the top first. So I'll select again the top, deselect the front faces, have the top only selected. Then from here, I'm going to hit extrude one time. Now pay attention. Extrude, if you keep hitting extrude, it's just going to keep laying new geometry on top of the surface. You want to hit it one time, you'll see the gizmo pop up, and immediately hit W. The reason is because now that we have the surface with an extrusion, you'll notice that now we can keep increasing geometry. But I don't want to do that. I want to go to scale and scale this in. Hit Q. Alright, now we've created quads up here on the top, and we have tris here in the center. I want to do the same thing to the bottom. So I can do it the way we did it before, which is select all these faces here, unselect this one, and I'll look at the bottom, and what I want to do is hit extrude, hit W, R, and scale in. For matching the surface or matching the overall hole for the top and bottom, it's best to do it from the top view. So again, I'll go to shading, wireframe, and now I'll notice that my bottom selection is a little bit larger than the top. So I'll bring this in to try to match the two surfaces. There we go. And now I hit Q. Now we have an equal amount, and it's in the same spot for the top and bottom. To create quads in the center here where all these tris are at, the easiest way to do this is just select one edge and select every other edge. And just hit delete. You'll notice now we have a face with 4 edges, and that's a quad. I'll do the same thing for the bottom. hit delete. And again, we have quads. Now that's done, I'm going to have to create an additional loop in the top here to be able to create that lip that goes on the top portion of the barrel. So I'm going to go to multi-cut, and now that we have quads here, it is easier to cut. You can't do that with tris, but with quads you can. So now we can actually cut just around the top and create that additional cut for the lip of the barrel. Okay, I'll select this bottom edge loop, and what I want to do is I want to try to match it to the one that's on the top right there. Alright, the next thing I want to do from here is I want to go ahead and select faces. I'm going to select the face loop on the top, and the way I did that was I select one, hold down shift, double click, and it selects the whole face loop. And from here I can go ahead and extrude, hit W, and I want to extrude that slightly. I'll do that same thing for the bottom. Alright, so now that I have that done, I created the top and bottom lips for the barrel. Then I can start working on creating this curvature that I have. The first thing I want to do is I noticed that I have an extra edge up here at the top, so let's go ahead and delete this one and this one. And I'm gonna show you what happens if you delete it correctly. Alright, so you notice we have vertices here, and these vertices can be manipulated to pull out the surface. Alright, if I select this edge here and just hit delete, the vertices are still there, and that can cause major issues on your model. So the way to do this is, if you want to delete the edge and the vertices at the same time, you select the edge loop and then just hit Control Delete, and you'll notice now that there's no vertices in its place. That's a clean deletion of topology. So I'll do the same thing on this edge here, Control Delete. And I'll do that to the bottom. And the reason is because since I did that extrusion, I have additional geometry now, and I don't want that. So now what I can do is I'll go to multi-cut, and I do a center cut here. And I'll do the same thing at the bottom. I can then take this and bring it out. Same thing with the top portion. Select it and bring it out. Then I can do 2 more multi-cuts, one below the center edge, one above, and then I can select these edge loops and round off the top. I'll do the same thing here at the bottom, multi-cut, cut into center, cut into center, select the edge loops, and scale these so we can have a round portion. Usually barrels are slightly round at the top as well, so you don't really get this type of drop off 90 degrees at the top or the side. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a multi-cut around the center here. Select those edges, and within my front view I'm going to increase these slightly just to give it some type of roundness. And I'll do the same thing for the bottom here. A multi-cut center edge loop, and then from my front view just slightly pull it down. Alright, and in here I want to do the same thing, so I'm going to multi-cut in the center, and with this one I'm going to actually scale these in slightly, and you'll notice now that we have a nice round surface. I'll do the same thing down here. Okay. Alright, so let's go to object mode and now look at our barrel. Now we kind of see that it's starting to look like an actual barrel. You notice some of these edges are kind of awkward, and that's because when we delete the vertices it creates a hard edge. So what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and go to object mode. I'll select the object and I'll go to surface. Actually no, I'll go to mesh display, and you'll see something that says soften edge and harden edge. I'll go ahead and soften all the edges. And then what I want to do is I want to select the edges that create the hard portions for our model. So that's these edges here, and I want to select this edge here as well as this one here. And what I'll do from here is I'll go to mesh display and harden edges. And you'll notice now that we have really sharp edges in those sections, and that kind of gives that feeling that, you know, the metal is actually, it's kind of stop stick but then ovals around, so maybe that's a weld point or so on. So this is basically what the model would be like when we're done. The next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and cover how to create the top portion of the barrel. So let's go ahead and save our project. The first thing before we save, let's start naming all this. So we have a P cylinder 1. We'll go ahead and click on it and we'll put drum underscore metal underscore base. Alright, and you'll also notice that within our channel box layer editor we have a whole bunch of information. Alright, that's because Maya, as you work with your model, Maya starts recording everything that's doing. When we create models, we don't want that information in there. It can mess up exports and so on. So we're going to go to delete by type history, You'll notice now everything's gone. And lastly, I want to make sure that my model always appears in the same spot. You'll notice here that we have some type of translation or transform information. We have a translate Y because we moved our drum up. And I want that to be 0. So instead of putting 0 here, what's going to happen is your model will go back down. You don't want that. You're going to go to freeze transformations, and what this does, it freezes everything, it sets everything to its original position. And now our object is in this location in space at all times. Lastly, well, that's about it. We can go ahead and save this. So we'll go to File, and we'll do a Save As, and we'll put here drum underscore bass underscore start, and Save As. Okay, on our next video, we'll go ahead and cover how to do the top portion of the drum, and then bring that mesh to the drum itself and apply it on the surface. That way we have our different parts for the drum. All right?